Good evening. My name is Paige Harrington. I'm Executive Director of the Sewall-Belmont House, and I'm very delighted to welcome you all here tonight for this wonderfully relevant and timely program. I hope that while you're here enjoying the program and the speakers, that you can get a chance to take a look at the house, learn a little bit about the history of the National Woman's Party and Alice Paul, and maybe talk to the docents a little bit and come away with a better understanding of what it is that we do and the ongoing quest for women's equality and how we're all still part of that. Let me turn it over now to Dr. Elsie Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we are so pleased to be here. Glad that we are joined with the Girl Scouts, and we are very honored to have Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson here as our interviewee tonight. I am Elsie Scott. I'm the president of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and a few years ago we launched the Avoice project, where we have created a virtual library online to capture the history of African Americans in the U.S. Congress. And it's Congresswoman Johnson was on the ground floor. In fact, she was there working on this project before I even came to work at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So therefore, we're very fortunate to have her here tonight. And we have partnered for this project with the Dell Incorporated. We've also partnered with Howard University. And Howard University is the official repository for the files of the Congressional Black Caucus members. And what we found that at Moreland Spingert Library, there were a lot of boxes that were there, and they needed to be categorized, they need to be archived, they need to be digitized. So we've been working with Howard, trying to help them get the files that they have organized, and then they've been sharing with us documents that we can place online.
Good evening. I want to welcome you all again. My name is Adrena Eiffel, and I'm the project director of the Avoice project for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Tonight's series is called A Voice in Action, and it is the third in the series of 13 that represent the original members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And we have today Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson joining us here to talk about environmental justice, and we're very excited about that. When you visit the site, you'll see that the Congressional Black Caucus has been really instrumental in environmental justice, and you'll see they were very instrumental in the original Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Bill, and see how it continues on today as the caucus is a leader in environmental issues that face the country today. All of this information is online and free access at avoiceonline.org. So when you do visit it, please do tell us what you think and things that we can add to, and also, as Dr. Scott mentioned, how you can share it with other people in the community.
I am Bridget Howe, Manager of Program Services at Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital. We are so glad to be able to introduce this partnership between our council and between the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation as we move forward and working on programming that aligns with A Voice Online and also aligns with Girl Scout leadership, the Girl Scout leadership experience. The program that we're doing is we're creating an African Americans in Congress patch program in order to teach girls about the history of the Congressional Black Caucus and about the leadership experience that we want them to learn from. Before I do go any further in describing this project, I do have to say that this was girl-led. One of our Girl Scouts, Jasmine Jennings, did an internship at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and said to them, "Why don't you do something with Girl Scouts?" They got in contact with us, and now look what has happened. So we're so excited that a girl made this happen. In line with the Girl Scouts' 3 keys to leadership, discover, connect, and take action, the goals of this program are to have girls discover African American leaders in Congress, African American history, the civil rights movement, how the congressional process works, and how to advocate for causes they believe in. We also want girls to connect with the amazing leaders around them, as we're doing tonight, and also to learn about these things with like-minded peers. And inevitably, the goal of this program is to help girls take action to make the world a better place. We plan on incorporating resources from the Avoice Virtual Library project, including tonight's event, and to cover topics such as the civil rights movement, the congressional process, advocacy, and environmental justice. We're so excited to see this program come to life, but I think I am most excited and passionate about introducing 2 of our leaders of today, and leaders of tomorrow, who are the girls who are going to be conducting this interview. First, Anastasia Broadus is And Anastasia, you can come on up. Anastasia Broadus is a senior at the Washington County Technical High School in Hagerstown, Maryland, which is the newest part of our council. We're so excited she's here tonight. She is a Girl Scout ambassador and has been a member of Girl Scouts for 10 years. Anastasia has volunteered her services as a program aide, CIT, and a junior counselor at Camp White Rock in Capon Bridge, West Virginia. She's also volunteered to be a leader in training, and we certainly hope that she continues to volunteer for Girl Scouts for a long time into the future. She's an advocate against teen smoking with a group called TRASH, which stands for Teens Rejecting Abusive Smoking Habits. And she enjoys dance and teaching dance in her spare time, although I can't imagine she has any. And Anastasia hopes to attend Trinity University next fall. And our second Girl Scout who will be conducting the interview tonight is Becca Arbacher. And Becca is a sophomore in the Math Science and Computer Science Magnet Program at Montgomery Blair High School in Silver Spring, Maryland. She loves science and is particularly interested in outer space and environmental science. While Becca has only been a Girl Scout for 2 years, she's really enjoyed the opportunities Girl Scouting has given her, especially the latest one. Through a Girl Scout teen newsletter, Becca heard about an opportunity to apply to be a delegate to the Children's Climate Forum in Copenhagen, which is going to happen at the same time as the UN conference, and she was one of 4 young people from across the country who was accepted. So we are delighted. And she's received a travel scholarship from Girl Scouts of the USA, who absolutely saw the importance of having a Girl Scout be able to go to this, have this opportunity. So we're so delighted that both of these young ladies are going to be asking the questions.
Representative Johnson, thank you so much for being here tonight. It is an honor to meet you and have this opportunity to learn from you. My name is Anastasia, and I've been a Girl Scout since I was in 2nd grade. I understand you were a Girl Scout. Can you tell me more about your Girl Scout experiences?
That's been a long, long time ago. But I enjoyed it. We learned a lot about, through the various steps in the moral training, in addition having fun with other Girl Scouts and going out to camp. I learned how to do a campfire, and we learned other little things of skill to share with others. It's been over 50 years ago. No.
My name is Becca, and I've been a Girl Scout for 2 years. When you served as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus in 2001, you were the 3rd woman to serve at this post. Were there any things that you learned as a Girl Scout that prepared you for these responsibilities?
Yes, I think the technique of getting along with people, sharing information, respecting others, having tolerance for people that don't do exactly as you expect. But I think that it was the basis, gave me the sort of the infrastructure of beginning to learn how to work as a team member.
As chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment, what is your role?
Well, I chair just about all of the legislation that has to do with water, development, and environment. It's quite broad. It's probably the broadest subcommittee. We are just about now to review and reauthorize the Clean Water Act. As you know, we have many challenges with the shortage of water, and so it's my plan now to start to work with stakeholders in certain regions where water has to be shared. As the water is being shared, the responsibility of keeping that water clean will also be shared by the various states and localities. So we're going to be spending a great deal of time with roundtables to discuss how we can do that. The reason I've chosen to do roundtables because it is not a formal hearing, but it's bringing the people together, having them sit at the table with their peers and stakeholders and plan how they're going to work together. When I say regional, it involves sometimes about 4 or 5 states together. Other times it's large portions of a state. Like my state, for example, is Texas. We could have 5 states within that state. So we have to learn how to work from one end of the state to another.
Later this month, I will be attending the Children's Climate Forum in Copenhagen, so this question is particularly important to me. During the 110th Congress, you spearheaded a letter to the President, urging him to act immediately to reduce the impact of climate change. Why was it important for you to do this?
Well, traveling around the world, you really see it. You see the effects of the climate change. I've attended several of the conferences in Copenhagen. And people are there from all over the world, and you get a chance to view and hear the kind of experiences and changes that they're having. Even our weather change. We can't predict weather and seasons as well as we did before. Every one of our large bodies of water are contaminated all over the country. And so it is clear that changes are here. We're concerned about tsunamis here. We had a tsunami in, can't remember the country. I went over there shortly after that. And we are not above or removed from having catastrophes of that sort. And I think Katrina might have gotten our attention that it can happen in this country. And we're trying to get ahead of others through the committee work to see if we can't avoid or prevent those kind of catastrophes happening.
The founding members of the Congressional Black Caucus were advocates for the original passage of the Clean Air Act. Tell us why you introduced legislation in 2009 to cut mercury emissions, which is an amendment to this act.
Well, because there are many elements now being found in drinking water, and it does affect the health of people. For example, right here in the capital city, there are locations where the infrastructure is so old that there's leaching going on, where you might find some of those elements. It could be lead or mercury, and in some areas they have asked, most especially on the Hill, have asked us not to drink water from the fountains. We drink water from bottles because it's considered to be much more safe than the old infrastructure that we have.
What do you think the founding members of the Congressional Black Caucus would say about the CBC's current agenda to impact the alternative energy discussion?
Well, very honestly, from the beginning of this caucus to now, we've had very similar goals each time because what we try to work for is to make sure that every human being be treated like one, and that we offer some relief for many problems that frequently, most especially low-income persons are subjected to as an experience. That has not changed from the beginning. It is just as much of the agenda now as it was in the beginning. What we do with that agenda does change sometimes depending on circumstances.
What are your thoughts about the current debate on the current climate bill in front of the Senate that talks about the cap and trade system?
I voted for the bill. I don't know if I'll see it in the same shape or not. But I do think it's very, very difficult to pass a piece of legislation that makes the kind of impact. But the time has come for this country to look for alternative sources of energy. We have been pretty dependent upon foreign oil. Even if we wanted to continue that, it wouldn't last very much longer. The oil supply throughout the world is probably going to be depleted in the next 50 years. So we need to do you can get a spot here and a spot there, but we need to move away from the fossil fuels because, first of all, they're bad for the environment. We've seen dyscrasias, blood dyscrasias when people have direct contact, all kind of ailments. That I firmly believe that there are many ways in which we can replace that type of energy with safer, greener energy.
During the 2009 annual legislative conference hosted by the CBCF, you held a session titled How U.S. Chemical Policy Fails Communities of Color. Tell us what came out of this discussion.
Well, you know, many of the businesses that produce lots of pollution are usually built on around a city or just on the outside of a major city area. When those areas come to be, the property around those areas become cheaper because, you know, you've got some unpleasant type of neighbors there with the company. So the low-income people are more likely to purchase that land. It's more affordable for them. Most of the time, the companies precede the housing, but there are times when the companies move in into the low-income areas because there's very little resistance they think they can expect, because politically we were not always as active as we are now. And so low-income people tend to experience a lot more polluted air, substances, lead. I'm a nurse by profession, and I have seen the effects of all kinds of environmental injustice around. But in addition to that, I have lived with some of that. When I was in the State House and State Senate, there was a portion of my district that had the recycling of car batteries and truck batteries. And it had contaminated the soil for a whole part of the city. And it started back in the 30s. And we always had a Goals for Dallas program in Dallas. And I look back through those goals, and from 1939 forward, they'd been talking about cleaning up this lead in West Dallas, and it was still there in the 80s. So I decided that we would focus on that area. We took tours. I got the Environmental Protection Agency involved and tried to make sure that we could clean up. We ended up having to move people out, close schools until they could clean up the area. What I noticed and what we had to stop is that they were digging all the contaminated dirt out, and they were moving it to another state, but it was moving to another low-income area. And so I said, no, we can't clean up one and contaminate another of the same profile or anywhere. But that was one of my first realizations of how low-income people have to put up with a great deal more negative than many others. You don't have to look very hard to find pollution. You can drive into a city and see fumes or something coming out. Some of the things that we enjoy the most in preparing them are very contaminating to the air. Cars, for example. Painting, where you are in areas that's closed. I did a tour, this has been probably 15 or 16 years ago since I've been in Congress, of a business in a low-income area of my district. And they were making roofing materials. I walked in and people had all kind of sediment in their hair, their mustache, all over. And I said, what are the ingredients? Well, they couldn't tell me. I said, it seems to me that you would have some kind of mask or some clothes that you would take off and leave here. I said, this is a lot of stuff here, and these people will have it all in their lungs. Well, I had no idea that was asbestos until later. And I said, I did not come out to close you down or report you to any place, but I'm reporting to you. You must clean this up. People must be in a better environment. Then I learned that in Texas, there were huge numbers of employees at various places that had lung cancer from asbestos. And became a very good friend of one of the leading attorneys that carried these cases. And I found from that there's so many elements that we come in contact with, don't know the danger of them. We are much more sensitive to it now, but there are still people working in areas that every breath they breathe, they're taking a chance on getting some type of dyscrasia or some kind of respiratory illness. Businesses continue to say over and over, I didn't move into their neighborhood, they moved into ours. No matter what came first, we have to make sure the environment is at least reaching a level of safety where the people won't be hurt. With the lead, there were a number of young children there, and it has been proven that the intoxication of lead will make them, will affect the brain, make them slow learners, and people are still talking about symptoms they had that had been there for years. They'd go out into their yards and they'd feel like something was crawling on their legs, and it'd be that little electrical type of experience. We as working people, as minorities, have dealt with this kind of environmental injustice all of our existence. We are becoming much more aware of it now. We're being more vocal, and I think that we are beginning to see some real interest in cleaning up the environment.
This year, Girl Scouts of the USA has introduced new program materials with the theme, It's Your Planet, Love It, which promotes healthy living, collaborative learning, and an interest in science, technology, engineering, and math careers. Girl Scouts around the country are becoming empowered to make an impact in our own communities. Do you have any advice for us?
You're on the right track. It is very, very important, most especially for girls, because in the past, you know, girls didn't get encouraged to go into math or science or engineering. We need every girl we can find to get interested in those areas, and males for that matter, because in our future, in order to continue to be competitive as a nation, we now must be putting new products, learning new information, improving upon our living techniques in order to live healthy lives in the future. And the crux of all of that change will be vested in those STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so it's very important. You know, between the time I was a little girl and getting here, girls sometimes were taught that those were masculine type of areas and not to go into them. Well, let me just say this. There is no area where a female must not try. If they can be on the front lines in the military, they can capture the knowledge and master about a body of knowledge and be leaders in any other area they desire.
Representative Johnson, thank you so much for answering these questions. I've definitely learned a lot tonight.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital, we would like to present you with this plaque. It includes a copy of the patch that girls get at an annual leadership conference held at Howard University.
I was just wondering whether the Congresswoman could talk a little bit about what interests her into getting involved with the Avoice project and the importance of that to the public as well as the members of Congress.
Okay. Well, when Mr. Woodard became a member of the foundation board, I had met him previously because I had worked with both Dell and Microsoft and Texas Instruments and EDS, because my area of interest has been with the technologies and the origins. And he came in, and I was chair of the caucus at the time, and he came in and he said, tell me this, how can we do something meaningful? And I said, you know, I don't know how to tell you this, but what we need is a way to preserve our history, because we don't think about it once we've experienced it. because you're so busy, just keep moving on. So he said, let me get back with you. So when he came back, he said, what about doing it virtually? I said, that sounds like of age. So, so from that, we visited with the Dale officials and with the foundation and many other members of the caucus, and made an agreement that we would proceed with a contribution or underwriting that Dale initially gave us to do the history of the Congressional Black Caucus. Much of our history is lost because we don't keep up with it on a daily basis. This job is so busy that when that day is over, you go to the next one. And often you don't think about the value of what has happened on a day or how others would see it as a value in later times. We are a very close-knit working group. We are almost like family. And we meet often to discuss ideas of how we can achieve more things. When I was chair, I organized the Tri-Caucus. I started out with the Bi-Caucus with the Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus. And as I was doing that, I was a member of the Asian Pacific American Caucus. They had very few members then because I had a large number of Asian Americans in my district. And so they decided they didn't want to be left out of that group. So we now have a Tri-Caucus. And we work together very closely. Many of our issues are the same. And we learn from each other. We work together, take positions together. We have certainly worked this healthcare reform bill day and night and day together, trying to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, that we've touched every area that we could touch. And when it becomes a final product, I think we'll be able to see our names as we read it through the words, because we really have worked hard on that, because we wanted to be sure that, you know, everyone had access to health care coverage. So that's how we got started, and Dr. Scott and some other members of the board have kept it going. We have a Avoice board, but we don't meet that often, but I think we meet enough to know that we must keep moving to keep it going.
The Girl Scouts have a program where it's called Forever Green, where girls do a unique environmental project, and I'm wondering if you can suggest any projects for the girls around environmental justice. They do it in their schools, and this is happening throughout the country.
You know, in my judgment, it's more education than anything else, but I think you can put together, maybe a little presentation or a play or diagram of how simple it could be to keep an area clean. Washing hands often. Making sure that the cups you use get washed periodically, not let them just sit and use them over and over. There are ways that we can certainly recycle a lot of the things that we work with each day. Careful about just throwing things down because it does pollute. I think that perhaps putting together a little booklet that talks about very simple things that you can do to help keep the planet cleaner. Don't throw chewing gum wrappers down. Things that sometimes we do by instinct and don't realize that is also polluting.
And if I could add, in our For Educators section, we have lesson unit on environmental justice. We have a lot of activities that talk about group activities that students can do, as well as individual activities that they can go out looking at the current legislation and history, and also being able to go into the community and do some performances and do some outreach and awareness, and particularly looking at their own community not only their neighborhood, but their wider community, particularly if you have girls from different areas in one troop, that they can learn where their fellow Girl Scout lives and what's affecting in her neighborhood versus what's happening in your neighborhood.
When I first came to Congress, there was a great deal more camaraderie between the parties. And we used to have debates that they would call Jefferson, some type of debate. Anyway, named for a couple of past presidents. And we'd come to the floor on different issues. We'd get teams of us, and it was very bipartisan, and debate certain issues. And I took the lead in debating the environment, and one of my adversaries was a colleague of mine from Texas, district's not far from mine, Joe Barton. And his whole thing was preserving jobs, and mine was preserving life. And we went back and forth, back and forth. We became very good friends. We just made sure we didn't attack each other, but attack the issue. And I started to do a little research and found that respiratory illnesses were becoming much more common in the area where they had cement plants, and there was one area where there was a cement plant, and the people's lungs were just getting full of that cement, and many of them that got sick and died in that particular area, which was in his district, with respiratory problems. And he kept saying, "You just want to shut these jobs down." I said, "No, there are techniques available that would clean this environment as they are preparing to make the final product. And that's what they must do, because if they don't, they're going to kill all of the employees and all the people that live in the area." And so I was able to quote statistics on the increase of incidents with both older people and children coming up with respiratory diseases that lived in that vicinity. And in this particular time, it happened not to be a minority community, but it was an older neighborhood. It doesn't make any difference whether it's minority or majority. If it's damaging people, then some attention must be given to it. But his thing is that if you require them to do all this, they're going to move and take the jobs, or they'll shut down. I said, you know, that is the attitude that's most damaging. If you go to people and say, look, we know that it's expensive, but if you're going to stay open and stay productive and be a good citizen, you've got to start investing in cleaning this up and using some of the better techniques. And many companies have really tried, put forth some effort to do it. It is possible for it to be done, but it is not that cheap for businesses to change and get in the habit of doing the same thing over and over with materials that machines and all that getting older. There are many products on the market that can clean the air and try to subdue some of the fallout in the environment if they're willing to do it. I grew up in Waco, Texas, which was a very segregated city. And we were a very close-knit family, and my mother and father would take us to be shopping for school and that sort of thing. And we'd go into stores, and they had an electrical water fountain that said whites only. And they had another one just hanging onto the wall that said colors. I didn't like it from the beginning, and I'd always tell my parents, I want some of the white water. It's cold. And my mother would say, don't cause that kind of ruckus here. And that bothered me, though, all during my childhood. That it disappeared during my childhood, as a matter of fact, but still, it bothered me. I always wanted to know why it was. And I said, well, you know, we like cold water too. Why can't we have it? So my mother said one day, you know, there are ways to change things. And it's not going to be just breaking the law. You have to change it. That never occurred to me, that I would be in the least interested in public office. but I was always interested in doing civic work and in the YWCA, Girl Scouts, Y-Teens. We always kept busy. And as I finished school, I was still, it had been instilled in me by my parents that you had to do volunteer work in order to pay some of the rent you owe on earth. And so I was always looking for something to do. And it was during the days before all of you were born of desegregation that I was working with a group of very diverse women. It was representatives from the National Council of Jewish Women, Church Women, Christian women, young women, all, and we decided that we had a responsibility to move the city of Dallas into a smooth transition of desegregation. And so we met all over the city. I was the African American that determined I was going to stay with it. And I was stopped by police when I'd go into some neighborhoods to go to meetings and all that. But I stayed with it. As time moved on, as I continued to be involved, I started getting some of the leading women. As a matter of fact, one was my mayor's wife that became a U.S. congressperson, said, you know, you need to run for office. And I said, oh, no, I can't do anything like that. And so she told other people, and they started kind of bugging me about it. And so I finally said, well, I need to talk about it and see what it involves. That was in 1971. In 1972, I ran for the Texas House of Representatives, and I won that and served there until I joined the Carter administration. When I left there, I went to the Texas Senate, and I stayed in the Texas Senate until I came here to Congress. Now, it never was a plan to be in public office. And sometimes I think to myself, how did I get tied up in a job this hard? But, you know, if you have a desire to be a part of changing things for the better, you get involved in it and time passes. And it's just, and here time passes so fast that before you know it, it's time to run again, and you say, well, I didn't finish that, you know, but I've got to get to a point where I'm willing to let it go and retire. But it's something that really does capture you if you're really interested in making changes, because as you know, most of the time your first try is not going to come out perfect. You do the best you can, and you just keep on working on it until you get it better and better. This is what we're experiencing as well in this healthcare reform. The speaker said yesterday, if you think it's going to be a 100% bill where you're going to be pleased with everything in it, we're wasting our time. But we've got to get it to the point where all of us feel we can live with it. And I said, besides that, you know, this Congress is not going to go out of business when it passes. We can come back and continue to make it better. And that's really what you have to be committed to do, is to continue to make things better, because things do change. And, but in terms of planning for it, it never crossed my mind. My roots were grounded in volunteer work. I remember, I'm a nurse by profession. I remember when I first started out as a graduate nurse, I worked nights a lot from 12 to 8, and I'd get off at 8 o'clock, go home and change clothes, and go out to a low-income part of town and give polio vaccines and tuberculosis vaccines. And everybody said, you're volunteering? And I said, well, yes. You know, this was instilled in me as a child to do what I could to help others. And I had no idea anybody was even noticing. But that was the reason why I was recruited to work with the women for this smooth transition of a change, and that's why I was invited to run for public office. And The rest is history. I ran and ran and ran and ran. I encourage a lot of young girls, young women, to think of it, because here's what I find. Women have so many responsibilities that men don't think about too much. You know, more than likely, the woman is going to be the person who's going to be right there with the children. And it doesn't mean the man won't be there, but it's just something very different about the mother giving birth to that child and being there. There are no, you know, as long as we have all these men in office, we are not going to be able to convince the people that it is different and yet it's equal. Just think of one subject, abortion. What woman takes that as a #1 concern? It's always men. And I just want to meet the first one that gets pregnant. You know, yesterday we were talking about the language of abortion in the bill, and there, you know, the majority religion in the House is Catholic. And I grew up in the Catholic Church. And they're concerned about the language on abortion. And it's the same as the Hyde language, which is law now. And so I said, well, can't we just say that that's an individual thing? And they said, oh, no, you know that the Council of Bishops in the Catholic Church are very adamant about this. I said, how many of them had a baby? How many of them been pregnant? It's always a man that wants to determine what a woman's going to do with her body. And so I said, well, you know, I am not pro-abortion, but I am pro-choice. I cannot make a decision for every woman who faces certain problems. And I don't even try that. I don't think it ought to even be discussed in the Congress. It ought to be discussed in a hospital or in the doctor's office or at home in your bedroom. So it helps to have women that are sensitive enough to know that they can sit down and joke a little bit and talk to men and kind of get them to understand that some things are just not their business.
I would like to ask, coming into Congress when you did, and being a woman, African American, but you know, just being a leader, and maybe the obstacles that just come as in with life. How do you encourage your office? You know, what motivates you to continue to go on?
Well, mostly my office. My staff encouraged me to keep going. They feel that that I'm interested, you know, dedicated to trying to get some things done, and so I get lots of encouragement. And don't let me go home. Nobody wants to hear me use the word retirement because I am a workaholic, and I don't draw the line anywhere. I'm a Democrat, and I'm surrounded by Republicans, but I don't care who it is. If I need to go to a meeting or whatever, I just go right on. Because every meeting I go to is going to have some Republicans in it, unless it's Democratic Party. And so I have just learned to accept others' opinions and respect them. Some of the things that are said, I cannot describe to you how much I disagree, but I'll let them finish, and then I'll tell them why I disagree. And when I'm listening to some debate or something, I want to hear mostly the people who disagree with me, to see where their thoughts are coming from, and to see who they're representing, because it takes a lot of votes to get here. And if somebody comes here that I think is truly crazy, I want to know who set them. I mean, I really would like, sometimes I just want to go to the area and look around and see what kind of mentality exists in that particular area, because we've got some of everything.